At this point in time, more than 500,000 Rohingya have migrated, have fled to Bangladesh from Myanmar in an exodus of biblical proportions with biblical barbarism associated with it, as you know. There was a time when we could deal with that kind of mass atrocity. There was a plan in place. It emerged in 2005 when the international community endorsed something called Responsibility to Protect, or known by its acronym, R2P. And it was introduced at the United Nations by the Canadian ambassador of the time, Alan Rock. And the principle was quite straightforward. If there was a mass atrocity occurring in a country which the government was unable to contain, or if the government itself was orchestrating a mass atrocity, then the international community had the responsibility to protect. That is, the international community could break through sovereignty and intervene diplomatically, economically, militarily in order to protect the groups that were under siege. Alas, the first example of responsibility to protect was used in Libya militarily in 2011, and the manipulations of the Western powers turned it into a disaster, and the reputation of R2P has been sullied subsequently. But just think, Afghanistan, the abattoir of Asia, 25 million people. Burundi, on the cusp of a possible genocide, 8 million people. The Central African Republic, reduced to ethnic and religious violence, 4 million people. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, consisting now of marauding armies across the landscape, 57 million people. The aforementioned Libya, which was left in a state of chaos, 7 million people. Mali, given to episodic violence on a day-to-day basis, some 10 million people. Somalia, the explosions still ringing in our ears, 11 million people. South Sudan, one of the worst crucibles of fratricidal violence on the African continent, another 8 million people. Syria, what can one say? Reduced now to 19 million. Yemen, 22 million people, reduced to a kind of ashes as a result of the incendiary bombing from Saudi Arabia. And Zimbabwe, where the lunatic president has turned the country into a cauldron of rape and violence, 14 million people. That's almost 200 million people identifiable now in hotspots of terror and atrocity. The atrocities being genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, or ethnic cleansing. Alas, we cannot turn to responsibility to protect at this moment in time, because every time a resolution comes before the Security Council to address the problem, one of the permanent members vetoes it, usually Russia or China. The veto has turned out to be a poison for the prospects of millions of humankind. What a travesty. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.